All right, we're up to video number 4 about how to eat kosher. How to become a religious Jew through eating kosher and get close to God by eating kosher. So we have to think, first of all, kosher is one of the commandments that is not so simple to understand because they don't necessarily always make sense. And this is because they have to do with the spiritual. Every human being, every animal, everything on the planet has a spiritual component to it. We don't see it, but sometimes it can be sensed, or well, actually, if you're very, very holy, you could see it, but it's very, very rare. But the idea is the same way one tries to eat healthy, so there's a spiritual health. And there are certain things that are destructive for our soul, and therefore one of the first things one needs to do when one wants to become religious and come close to God is to learn to be healthy, have a healthy diet, spiritually and physically. So, by the way, part of eating kosher is not just what you eat, is how you eat it. If you eat like an animal, this is not, it's not eating kosher. Eating kosher is it's a whole lifestyle. Again, the commandments are not here just for do's and don'ts. They're here to teach us how to be as a human being, and how to perfect ourselves. So we have to be refined. So when we eat, we have to have in mind that we're elevating the food and elevating the spiritual component that is part of that food. Everything exists because there's something spiritual behind it. Yes, and therefore we try to elevate it. So let's speak about more practically in terms of, by the way, the reason we say a blessing before we eat is to remind us of what I just said, to elevate the food, and we eat for the purpose of coming close to God and elevating whatever we're eating and enjoying and thanking God, being aware of the pleasure that He gives us. He could have created all the food without pleasure, without taste, but He created the 5 senses and we can have so much pleasure from it. It's one of the strongest connection to God is food. Food is very important. We Jews, we eat all the time, but we have to eat healthy. The reason the food is so important, by the way, is because our first connection when we're born with the mother is eating. And eating is always a connection that we have when we meet people. It's a connector. If we stop eating, we die. If we eat, our soul stays connected to our body. So eating is the glue that keeps our body and soul together. That's why it feels so good. And when we eat, we can have connection with God also on a spiritual level. And this is why there were sacrifices in the past at the time of the temple, because when it was done with tremendous holiness, the killing animal and eating from it will be like a meal we have with the spiritual world, a connection with God. That's why we say that when we eat in a holy way, that God is sitting at our table. So, and the last point is that eating is so important because when we eat, we're basically elevating the physical world. The whole purpose of we being in this world is to elevate the physical world. So we, as human beings, we're made out of body and soul, and we try to unite them. Then when they unite, they get elevated. So when we eat, we take the physical and we connect it to our soul and our thoughts, and we elevate the physical world. That's why it's so important. Okay, so how do we keep kosher? By today, it's very easy because there's almost everywhere in the world kosher store. But basically, meat. If you eat meat, the meat has to be killed by a shochet, which is someone or a type of rabbi who knows how to kill the animal. The animal is supposed not to suffer. You know that in the laws of kashrut, it's very important that animals are treated the right way, and they eat what's healthy for them, and they're supposed to be treated with a tremendous respect until its death. No pain should be inflicted upon them. You probably will hear about, unfortunately, shochet that mistreated animals. Well, that's very unfortunate. A real rabbi and shochet would never mistreat an animal or give them food that's not healthy for them. So meat we have to be killed in a proper way so that the animal doesn't suffer. And how do we know what animal are kosher? We know from the Torah. Basically, there are two signs that tells us that an animal is kosher. Any animal that has split hooves and chew its cud, then you know it's a kosher animal. All the other animals are not kosher animal, even if you have just one sign. It needs those two signs. Why? There's many reasons why those two signs, and you can look online. There'll be many reasons. Teach us about life, about how to behave, how to be as a human being, but not for now. So that's the meat. In terms of meat, there are certain animals that you can eat, and those have two signs, split hooves, and chew its cud. Then for fish, you can eat all the fish that you want as long as they have fins and scales. Real fins, strong fins, and very strong scales, right? And not scales that go easy, and then fins. That's the sign for the fish. All other seafood are forbidden. We don't eat any seafood at all. Then in terms of milk, we can only drink milk, cheese, or anything that comes from a kosher animal. So the kosher animal that I mentioned, that chew its cud and have split hooves, you can drink their milk. Then that's for the milk. Then in terms of wine and grape juice, this is the only drinks that needs to be really supervised and by someone who is knowledgeable, an Orthodox Jew. And so for Jews and grape juice and wine is supposed to have a special stamp that it was supervised by Jews. So those are the main thing. Why anything that is raw and pure and organic, talking about fruits and vegetables and anything you can find in nature, there's no problem to eat it. Everything is kosher. We're not allowed to eat insects. Insects are not allowed to be eaten, except 4 types of grasshoppers. But today we're not so sure which one they are, so we don't eat those. But which food are not kosher? Any food that is connected in which you have some non-kosher animal put. So let's say they put a pork, and from that pork they let's say Haribo candies. So Haribo candies, they take the hooves of porks or gelatin of porks or stuff like that, and they make out of it candy, the Haribo candy. So these we're not allowed to eat because it comes from a non-kosher animal. Any ingredient that comes from a non-kosher animal will render, if it's mixed with kosher food, will makes it non-kosher. So we cannot eat. That's why there's so many foods today. It's very hard because all foods are mixed and processed and all that. So all processed food becomes anything that you know is 100% organic and was not mixed with anything else, then you know it's kosher. Now, there are certain stamps, these OU, star K, half K, a lot of and there are different. Why there are so many hersherim, we call it symbols that it's kosher, is because there are different stringencies on about how often they check the food, how often they go in the place, and how clean it is, and how holy the shochet is, and so there are many different levels, and one has to speak to one's rabbi or learn more about it if you want to choose from which symbol to eat. But most Jews eat from the OU, Starke, Chavke, or Hasidic Hersher. That's about that. And trying to think if I didn't forget anything. I think that's it. The birds. We're allowed to eat certain birds. Only the birds that are mentioned in the Torah. Again, so we're allowed to eat pigeon and ducks and stuff like that. But the birds that are not kosher are listed in the Torah, and the birds that are kosher also. So we know which bird to eat. I think I covered everything, and besides knowing what to eat and what not to eat, one has to, like I said before, not eat food that is fat, or eat too much, or eat too little, or we need to be healthy and eat the proteins we need and the vitamins we need, and we need to have a healthy diet. It's not because you can eat kosher and really eating like a glutton and be like an animal. As Jews, we're supposed to be role models and eat with like nobles, like kings at the table of kings, and we're supposed to eat in a refined way, and be healthy and watch what we eat, and buy ideally organic if we can afford it. But the more healthy we eat, the better it will be. Now, there's also in kashrut other laws, and one of the main other laws, besides what is a pure animal or what you can eat or not eat, is mixing. You cannot mix meat and milk. Mixing meat and milk creates a spiritual, I would say, a problem. It creates a spiritual problem, a circuit. I was looking for some electrical expression, but basically we cannot eat meat and milk together. If we eat meat, we have to wait 6 hours. If we drink milk, we wait. We don't have to wait unless it's hard cheese. We just rinse our mouth after milk, and we can eat meat right away. If we eat meat, we wait, according to most opinions, 6 hours. Some have different opinions depending on which country they come from. The most accepted opinion is 6 hours. Some hold 5 hours 1 minute, some hold 3 hours, and very few hold 1 hour. But the most accepted opinion is 6 hours. Just to give you one small idea, one of the ideas why we wait after meat and we don't cook milk, we don't cook meat with milk. That's the root of the prohibition, is because meat represents death. We took an animal and we killed an animal, right? So going right away to drink milk, which represents life and life force and growing,